Next project is the horizontal stabilizer. I'm going to start with preparing all of the parts and then getting the framework laid out, getting everything clecoed together, lay the skins over, get those clecoed on, get everything straight, checked for twist, make sure everything is good and true, and then go ahead and match drill through the skins into the spars. And at that point, it's ready for assembly. But first, got to get the framework put together. I'm gonna do that now. So on the working on the horizontal stabilizer, and on all the ribs, of course, they're all preformed and stamped and whatnot, but they end up with a little bit of curve or bow to them. So they have you go in and with your fluting pliers, just flute a little bit on the edges and bring it into nice and flat. Make sure when you're doing your fluting, the fluting pliers, they have a convex surface and a concave surface. See if I can get it there. There you go. Concave and convex. You want to make sure that you put the concave side of the pliers on the inside of your rib because you're going to deform the material in that direction. You don't want to have it bumping out the other way. So just a little FYI there, a little tip if you've never used fluting pliers before. So yeah, I got all those done. I got all of the end ribs, the nose ribs. The nose ribs, they do say, and I did find this to be true, that after you flute them, you may deform the little tabs a little bit and they may be kind of bowed out. So I took the pair of pliers and kind of went through each little tab and bent it in pretty close to 90 degrees or perpendicular from the rib surface itself. On the spars, you'll notice that these are black. They're not anodized. This is just a single stage self-etching primer. And I'm not priming everything, but I am priming things like where spars, as an example, critical components I may consider priming, and especially where I have pieces like the doublers that are going to sit inside. That is an opportunity for condensation and whatnot to get in between those two surfaces and potentially cause some corrosion. I do live in Arizona, so it's pretty much a non-issue, but I can't guarantee that this airframe will always live its life in Arizona. So I am doing some priming on some of those. The primer I'm using, I use this stuff here. It's SEM self-etching primer. I use this on some of my robotics projects. Works really well. It's fast drying. It's single part, so it's not rock hard, super durable. But for an application like this, it really doesn't need to be. So next is I'm going to lay this out, get the ribs on, get everything clecoed together, and get this frame assembly put together. I decided to do solid rivets where the spar doubler is. The spar doubler attaches to the spar instead of the pulled rivets. Just another one of the changes I'd like to do, and that's what I went ahead and did here. Here's one bay I've finished on the leading edge spar, riveting the doubler in place. You know, it's a little more time consuming getting everything in there, bucking it and whatnot. Certainly would be a lot faster if I did the pulled rivets, but it's a personal preference thing. Like I said, when I can get access to buck rivets and when it makes sense, I'm gonna drive the rivets, solid rivets. So here's first bay done. I've got, well, a handful more to go. And then I've got to do the backside as well. So on to bucking more rivets. All right, I've got most of this done. Got a few left to do down here. Got the front spar and rear spar riveted. Went really well. You can see here, here's the shop side of the rivets. They bucked up real nice. And here's the rear spar. Everything that goes through the spar and the spar doubler are AN 470 4-4 ADs. These are the hard rivets. Through the ribs, I'm doing the 4-5s. Here's a view looking at the shop side of the rivet heads. These all meet spec in terms of the size of the shop head after driving the rivet. So looks pretty good. Man, it's time consuming, but again, it's just one of those things that I'm happy to spend a little time and do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up these ribs here. Got a couple more left down there. I'm not sure if I'm gonna buck the rivets on the ribs up here in the front. I think it'd be easier for me maybe to pull those rivets. Whatever's easiest for me there is what I'll do. But this turned out nice. I know some of you may question, why the hell are you doing that? They work just fine with the pulled rivets. And you know what? You're right, they do. But it's what I want to do. So there we go. Turned out good. The frame is assembled. Everything is riveted in place. I did do the pull rivets on the nose ribs. I tried doing driven rivets here, and it's fine, but it's just a little hard getting the gun in here, and then it was going to be more difficult trying to get the bucking bar back in here behind this rib and the rivet going through all this material. So I just went by the book. Aside from this nose rib here, all of the other nose ribs are driven with the pull rivets. By the way, I know a lot of you guys are using, or you have seen being used, the Milwaukee rivet gun. I use a Marson. Use this on some of my robotics projects. It's considered a high-end gun. It's actually what you're going to see used in manufacturing facilities. I don't know if it's better than a Milwaukee. I don't have a Milwaukee, haven't used one. My guess is it's the same or maybe even a little better. But I've never had any problems with it. It works really nice. So this is done. I will say I have my first screw up, and some of you may have noticed this already in some other clips. And this is just me, you know, not really paying attention when I got started. The doubler, I have one of the doublers rotated. You're supposed to put the doublers with the holes, which match up to the holes on the main spar. And I did that fine here. You can see I've got them here, and then one side is not drilled. Well, I flipped this one, and I'll be damned if I didn't notice it until I had gotten well beyond the point of being able to flip it over. So I hope what I've done on this side is I went ahead and match drilled all the way through so that I have one side drilled through, because that wasn't, right, since it was flipped. And then this side here is not drilled, but I'm not doing that because I have to have on the other side, get this thing flipped over here, I have to have an undrilled surface here like I do here so that the skin can rest where it needs to rest once everything is straight and untwisted, and then I would match drill through the skins. So what I'm hoping is that since I do have to go through this, it'll go through this. I don't know where it's going to land on these holes under here. Hopefully that's not going to be an issue. I really don't think it's going to be. I think it's just going to go where it's going to go, and I'll just drive the rivet, and hopefully it's not too far off. But, you know, that's my screw up. So that was kind of like my warning of, hey, idiot, pay close attention when you're doing these things, because it's kind of hard to reverse on some of this stuff. But there we go. It's mostly done, and it took a total of about 3 hours, I guess, to get to this day. Maybe a little longer, 3.5 hours. Not too bad. Working on the skins now, the horizontal skins. And this is going to be a perfect application for me to use the rivet squeezer instead of bucking rivets, putting in the inspection cover ring, the doubler ring that goes on the inside of the skin. So I've got my squeezer here. I've already gone and calibrated this and got it set to the right height. I've got one rivet on there already, so I'll come over here with this one and fit this right in here. Okay. Give that a good squeeze. Check that. Oh yeah. And on these, I'm just using AN470 4-3As. I'm not using the hard rivets on this. This isn't really a structural thing here. So the soft rivets are fine for the inspection cover rings. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these. Got the horizontal stabilizer set up on the workbench here, and I'm getting it fixtured for match drilling on these bars. And what I've done is I had a bunch of this leftover extrusion material. This is about 1 inch by 3 inch, which I had left over from my handrail on the cable railing up there. And what I did is then I put some 1, 2, 3 blocks on top of that, and they go underneath the spars. The reason I used this first extrusion was I needed some clearance. If I didn't use that, then you can see my clecos. You can kind of see there, my clecos would have hit the table. So if I bring my stabilo level here, and you can see I'm at 0 degrees, which I expected because my table's fairly straight and level. I got the same arrangement over here. I did have to put a little bit of shim underneath this, and I should be fairly close to 0. Yeah, I'm 0. Sometimes it flickers to 0.05 of a degree, but so there we go. We got 0 and we got 0, and I'm happy with that. I've got my lead shot bags there kind of holding things down. And I guess the next step now is I'll go ahead and start running some drill holes through these bars, match drilling. I got the one side done. I flipped over the stabilizer, and now I'm going to match drill the top side. I did have to make some adjustments on the shimming because my fixturing kind of moved a little, but I'm 0 here, I'm 0 there, and I'm gonna go ahead now and match drill the top side. Got everything match drilled, unclecoed, vacuumed up all the chips, and now I'm going in and doing some deburring. On a good note, my mistake where I had one of the spar doublers flipped upside down and the holes were on the wrong side, turned out to be not a problem, because by the time I leveled this thing out, straightened it out, and match drilled everything, the holes just ended up right pretty much where they were anyway. And of course you're upsizing them from a 40 to a 30, so any variance there probably gets taken up there. So I lucked out on that, but again, that's just a little heads up for myself. Take an extra few seconds and just make sure before I do anything that is not reversible. Here I'm installing the doubler that I decided to do. This is a change I made. If you watch my previous video on the rudder, you'll see more about that. But this is a doubler I added to the back side of the spar, the rear spar where the hinges go. Since I'm going to be doing solid rivets to hold the hinges on, I wanted a little bit of extra thickness in the material there just to kind of spread the load over a larger area. And I had some 16th inch doublers. I drew them up in CAD and had them made, and I'm riveting those in place now. For the hinges on the stabilizer, got these bronze bushings, and those get pressed into these bores here. And I'll use my arbor press for this. Real easy job with the arbor press. Just as with the rudder, I am doing solid rivets for the hinges. You'll hear me explain on the rudder video that this is really unnecessary, but it's just something I wanted to do. So what I've done is I bought my rivets oversized. I have a rivet cutter, and I just cut these to the size I need to give me the 1.5 times the rivet diameter protruding from the back side. I've got my number 4, or yeah, my 4X rivet gun here. I've got my monster bucking bar, and I am going to make sure I can get everything in there. Yep. I've got the part clamped to the table. This 4X likes to put a pretty good bang on this, and it wants to move on me, so I've got it all clamped down. I'm gonna get in here and get this guy bucked. Keep everything nice and straight, everything perpendicular. I shouldn't have too many issues here. Let's go. That's good. Got all the hinges riveted on. Everything turned out good. No bad rivets, didn't have to drill anything out. But overall, you can see I also, as we saw earlier, did the solid rivets everywhere else where I could. So, on to the next step. These holes here get dimpled. I've already done a couple here, just using the squeezer that they include in the kit. Seems to work pretty good. I've got it adjusted to where they bottom out so I can get a good squeeze on it. You want to make sure when you do this, there's like a male side and a female side to this dimple. Obviously you want to dimple down into the skin, so make sure you have this orientation correct. On dimpling these ribs here, which is called out in the manual for countersink rivets, I was finding that my rivet squeezer, the body of the jaw is too large, and it's interfering with this little lightning hole flange here. So I just took the dies out, and what I'm doing, it's a little funky, but I'm just putting them like so, and then I'm using my Knipex parallel jaw pliers, which make great rivet squeezers, by the way, for soft rivets. And I just give it a little squeeze, and voila, got a good dimple. So it's a little tedious, but it's better than, I tried the other one and those squeezers was getting in there and it was starting to deform these these tabs a little bit in a way I didn't like. So I'll continue on using this method here. And along the front spar here, you'll do countersinks with the micro stop. You want to adjust your micro stop to where you get just the right amount of countersink. If you're new to micro stops, you might want to drill a little sample piece and play around with it, or start light and just work your way into it, kind of iterate into the right depth. What you don't want to do is go too deep right off the bat, because you can't put the material back on once you take it off. So I've gone a little light here, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to adjust my micro stop here, and I'm just going to screw it in just a little bit there, lock that back in place, and I'm going to go through here and give these a little bump. That looks pretty good. What you're looking for is the sheet here that's dimpled, for it to sit nice and flat, and those dimples rest nicely inside those countersinks. So you can kind of look at it from the front edge once you put that skin on, and make sure you don't have a gap between the skin and the areas between the countersinks. One good way to check and see if you've got your microstop set to the right depth is to come inside here. And I was noticing I can see, if I lift up the skin a little bit, see if I can get it to focus. And if I push down on the skin, you can still see a gap there. So I need to, see right there, that gap, I need to get that microstop deeper so that those dimples can rest inside there. This is what I've ended up with. Got these all done. Everything checks out pretty good. You can also see along the front here, I've got a nice tight seam here. So I've got the depth set really good. Got this side clecoed up, getting ready to now flip it over. Cleco the other side, fixtured up on my extrusions. Do one more final check for any twists. And shim as required. Everything should kind of drop into place though, since it's all been done and pre-drilled. And then at that point, I'll go ahead and proceed to rivet this thing together. Both sides are clecoed together. I've got everything jigged up again here on my machinist blocks at the spar locations. I've got dead nuts level there. I'm gonna take it and bring it over here. And can we see? Dead nuts level there. I have twisted my clecos to make sure I didn't have any of them that had a lot of run out. Make sure my measurements were accurate, and everything is good. So this is nice and straight, and I believe we're ready to go ahead and put some rivets in there and go for it. Well, damn, I got it all clecoed up, and I went and looked a little closer at the parts drawing, and I noticed I'm also supposed to dimple that hole and that hole. So I've already got this one unclecoed. I gotta take this skin off. I gotta do the same thing on the bottom. And I gotta take it all off. I gotta countersink that one. After I just put in, how many clecos? I don't know, a lot. So study the parts manual a little closer. It's hard to see, and I need to get my iPad out here so I can zoom in. But I mean, if I just looked at it a little bit, I would have seen, yeah, that one and the second hole back there. So my bad. Probably add another hour to my project. Looking at the kit and the parts drawing, and I have two sizes of flush rivets. I have a 43 and a 42, 43 being the longer. 43 is listed as number 19 in the drawing. So basically the entire row that goes through the spar is the 19, the longer rivet, which makes sense because there's thicker material to have to go through the spar and the doubler there. 17s are just going through the skin and the ribs. So looks like this is all gonna be the 43s, or the number 19 on the parts drawing. These are gonna be the 42s, or the number 17 here, and then a number 17 or a 42 here. So pretty intuitive. Occasionally I'll come across a couple holes where just not quite lined up right, even after I get a pick in there and try to line it up. It's hard to get the rivet in there. In this case, I'll just use a number 30 checking reamer, and that just cleans up the hole and then lets you drop a rivet in. Grab a rivet here. That should fit in now. Yeah. So, easy fix. I've got my rivets all laid out here, getting ready to pop them in place. Looked at the parts diagram, and it spells out what length of rivet goes where. I remember watching these videos of other builders before I got my kit, a year ago, and watching them, and you got to put a 43 here and a 42 here, make sure there's a 41 rivet here. And I was a little intimidated by that. Like, man, I hope I'm going to be able to get all these in the right spot. Well, the manual is pretty clear. But honestly, it's just common sense. You got the longest one, the 43s are going through the skin, the spar, and the spar doubler. Well, the doubler ends here, so from here out, it's just gonna be a 42, slightly shorter rivet, because it's the skin and this bar. And then where it's just a skin and a rib, well, that's a 41 because that's the thinnest material there. So it honestly is just common sense, makes a lot of sense just looking at it. So it really isn't that big of a deal. I'm gonna go ahead now and get my rivet gun out and get all these things set. The top side is fully riveted. I wanted to try my pneumatic riveter. I've been using the electric, my Marson rivet puller for most of it. And obviously the pneumatic one is faster. It's about twice as fast. It's a little more cumbersome to maneuver, but it is faster. The only thing I didn't like is the pneumatic one is pretty abrupt. It's a pretty hard, quick pull, which really wasn't an issue, but I did use it on this rivet here, this flush rivet, and it kind of jerked out of my hand a little bit, or I don't know what happened, but I'm gonna have to drill that one out. So I'm gonna use my Marson electric rivet puller for any countersinks when I get to the other side, and use the pneumatic only for any of these if I want to. But anyways, that's it. I just have this one rivet that I'm not happy with. Easy fix. I'll drill that guy out, get a new one in there. And at this point, I'll flip it over. I'll reset it up on my blocks, check for any twist one more time. And if all is good, I'll get the other side riveted. I've got it flipped over and checking my level there. I'm right in the lines. Take it over to this side. And we're right in the lines. Give my little glicosa twist and double check that. Yep. So perfectly straight. I've got it on my blocks. There's no play there. It's not moving. This thing is flat as flat can get. So rivet this side. Decided to open up the hangar door and take advantage of the nice weather today. Summer's coming, and in AZ it gets pretty warm. I do have AC in the hangar, which will help, kind of takes the edge off, but I want to take advantage of these days when I got them. I don't know if you can see that house behind me there. That's across the taxiway. It's been under construction for about the last 9 months, and it's probably got another 6 more to go. So houses are taking a while to build out here, but it's a pretty nice little place. So I'll have a neighbor behind me across the taxiway here shortly, probably this summer maybe, or fall. But anyways, yeah, let's get back to work on this stabilizer. I'm gonna try a slow-mo shot of the underside of one of the rivets while it's being pulled. Let's see what it looks like. There's some areas here on the skin where when Rans ships it, it's got cellophane tape and it's all gooey and gunky. And I've tried all sorts of things, brake cleaner, WD-40 sometimes works, but this place here sent me some of this stuff, Super Clean degreaser. I thought, well, let me try it and see if it works for that. And as it turns out, trying to do this with one hand here, not knock things over, but it actually takes that stuff off pretty good. So they did send this to me at no cost, but it really does work. So if you want to check out Super Clean, It also works great. I've been using it to do degreasing on the underside of the belly of the plane, and it works great for that too. So I don't know, check them out. Horizontal stabilizer is done. I've got it standing up over here out of the way for now, while I probably am going to tackle the vertical stabilizer next, followed by the elevator. In case anybody was wondering, the horizontal stabilizer complete, or at least mine, weighs 16 pound 8 ounces, so 16.5 pounds. I did tear these out. When I put these on, then I set the horizontal stabilizer on that. So with those on and teared out, 16.5 pounds for the stabilizer. Well, that concludes the horizontal stabilizer video. I think all in, I've got on the horizontal stabilizer maybe 10 hours or so. But keep in mind, I did do the solid rivets. I did those doublers. That added a little extra time. But horizontal stabilizer's done. Next will be the vertical stabilizer. Stay tuned. Oh, and like and subscribe if you like my content. It helps.